Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to make a start now for our annual general meeting, our second annual general meeting here at District Action Haringey. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to you all for coming along, in particular to David Lammy, to give up his time to come and talk to us today. Councillor Daphne Neves, thank you for coming. Just to point out the staff members that we have. Phil Stevens, our Chief Executive Officer. With his back to you is Darren, our Communications and Engagement Officer. And to the left is Christelle, who is Phil's PA, sport worker. And signing you in is our lovely Rukia, who's our star volunteer, who you will hear from a little bit later today. We do have 4 trustees here with us. Myself, Graham Day, I chair the Board of Trustees. At the back, in the fetching white cap, we have Yvonne. Aisha is at the front, next to Manasseh there. And I believe Andrew is somewhere in a quiet space, which is brilliant. So thank you all again for making the effort to come along. Let's just go through a bit of housekeeping. We're not expecting any fire drills, but if we do hear the fire alarm, which is a bell, then we need to leave by one of the 3 exits that we have in this room. We make our way out to Winkfield Road, and we then congregate by the entrance to the car park, so they can do a roll check from us all signing in. But hopefully we're not going to be disturbed this afternoon. And should you require the toilets, they're just adjacent to the entrance where you came in, both male and female. I'm going to run through the agenda today, just so we know what's happening. David, as I said, will speak shortly. We will then run through the annual report, which I'll give a brief overview of. We don't have any resolutions for today. We will then look at the elections that took place. Both myself and Aisha are standing for reappointment. I shall hand over to Phil at that point to run through the voting that's taken place. We will then be having a word from Councillor Daphne Neves, and one of our speakers that was due to come hasn't been able to get to us today. But we do have a surprise guest speaker, but more of that just a little bit later on. Following the closure of the meeting, we will then have food available, and I understand there's going to be quite a lot. So it'll be well worth waiting for. So I'm going to shut up now. I'm going to ask Right Honourable David Lammy MP to say a few words for us. And if you wish, yes, there is a microphone available.
Well, look, thank you very, very much. It's wonderful to be with you. Really, really wonderful. I've got to say, we've got to thank Yvonne Denny for insisting that I come this afternoon and spend some time with you. I have a new secretary. She's very officious and she knows how busy I am. And the invitation came in and she said, no, I'm sorry, I can't do it. Unfortunately, I saw the email and I thought, I know that name, oh my God. I said, what have you done? I'm going to be in trouble, the whole of Tottenham will know. And we fixed it, so it's wonderful to be with you. And I was sitting here and I actually saw my cousin Gregory. I don't know if you know Gregory, but Gregory was sitting having his lunch in there and thinking about my own family context and disability. And by the way, I've got 3 children and 2 of my children have special educational needs. I don't talk about it a lot because one doesn't want to share ones, but I wanted to share that with you. So the pressures and the challenges I have some sense of, not complete sense of, but some sense of. The great story, and I'll just start as a politician, the great story of the 20th century is that if we were sitting here 100 years ago, a lot of people would not have been able to dream 100 years ago of achieving their dreams in their lifetime. They would not have been able to, what we call self-actualize in their minds. What do I mean by that? Well, if you were a woman at the beginning of the 20th century, you were the property of your husband or your father. If you were black or brown, you were colonised. If you were LGBTQ, forget it. Not able to love who you want to love in your lifetime. And I'm very sad to say this, but if you had a disability, you were written off and often shut away. And the great story of the 20th century is how bit by bit, because of a lot of people who fought for rights in a whole set of ways, like the suffragettes who fought for rights for women, people like Martin Luther King, and so many others. By the end of the 20th century, in the beginning of this one, so many people who had no rights at all, could not dream dreams, were able to get those rights, beginning to get those rights, moving forward. When I think of disability, I think of living in a country that has a wonderful welfare state and security net that picks people up and supports them like an insurance scheme if they need it. It's like an escalator that you can come onto and step off of, depending on what your needs are at any given moment. I think of the right to work and to gain purpose so often in your life with that ability to work and to have a degree of independence, which is something else that people often forget in relation to those who have disability. The right to be able to move around also supports your independence. To get on a tube, get on the train,
You can't.
get into a building.
Not around here, you can't.
I'm coming to that. Coming to that. The political point is this. Are we yet there?
No.
We're not there.
We're not there. We should be.
And have things, it's like a patient when you go to the doctor. Things are either getting better, they're getting worse, or they're about the same. So I ask you, what is it? Are they getting better?
Getting worse.
Getting worse.
Getting worse. Getting worse. Getting worse. So I suppose as a politician and as an opposition politician, I want to say that there's a tremendous more we've got to do on the welfare state. Support people with disabilities to have quality independent living. I have to say, I see week after week in my constituency casework in Tottenham the most horrendous assessments done. People horrified and scared, told that they're not entitled, that they can jump through these hoops, they can do this, they can do that. The system's set up to ensure that they can fail. And we need to reform that assessments process in terms of independent living. We saw during the pandemic the way so many people were set back because of shielding and the support that they felt that they didn't properly get. And I think that whilst I am proud to live in a country that makes its business to get people into work who have disabilities, again, and that doesn't exist in many countries in the world, there's a lot more we can do in this country if we're serious about that, particularly the cost of living crisis. I was with a mother with disabilities. She lives with her son just a few weeks ago. I actually tweeted a little video if you're on Twitter, and this woman was talking about cost of living and having to sit at home cold during the day can't put the heating on, just can't afford it. But she does put the heating on when her son comes back from school, because she doesn't want him to go without. And she doesn't want him to get ill, so she puts the heating on. But she's terribly scared, and she's got the payment meter, sometimes the meter goes off. The stress, because of course the other side of often living with a disability is if you didn't already have some mental health challenges, the stress of all of this brings on mental health challenges. So I'm really, really pleased to be with you, Disability Action Haringey. I'm so pleased that the organisation, as a membership organisation, has been set up, and that you're gathering, that you're mobilising. There's a phrase that's sometimes used in politics: don't mourn, organise. And you're organising, because you're together. And as you know, when you're together, you can make a bigger impact. You can have a bigger say on what services should look like, what rights you expect, how to improve things, make them better. Haringey at the moment is consulting on an issue that's controversial to many of my constituents. What do you think that issue is? LTNs. Well, I hope that you can make your voices heard in that consultation, because you're organised, you're together. And if you just write one little letter as an individual, sometimes it doesn't get the bang that you can as a community. So that tweaks can be made to improve it for people living with disabilities. So thank you very much for inviting me. Very pleased to be with you, and very pleased that we've got this organisation here in Haringey. Thank you.
Okay, let me give you an overview of the organisation, what's been happening over the last 12 months. I know some of you will have had services from the organisation, but not necessarily been involved with all of them. We have provided direct payment support to direct payment holders, particularly around recruiting personal assistants, and the charity does facilitate the PA register, which allows local residents to become employed as personal care assistants, which I think is an asset to both the community and the organisation. Something which provides limited funding or no funding, which is one of our biggest areas where people contact us, is around information, advice and advocacy. We do provide that, but it is very, very limited because we don't have the funding at the moment for that. But that is one of the biggest reasons that people actually contact us. We have within the organisation the Physical Activities Network, which is a group of disabled people, deafly disabled people, coming together with stakeholders to look at access to services around physical activities with the ethos of improving access to those services. And we've been instrumental in coordinating 4 access audits of the 4 leisure centres within the borough. We've also rolled out the Social Model of Disability Ambassador Programme, which is about raising awareness in the community with the barriers that disabled people face. And where we face those barriers, then we challenge them for improvement. So that's an ongoing programme that we will continue to roll out. Going forward, we will continue to deliver those services. And more recently, David touched on it when he was talking about cost of living. We have provided grants up to £4,000 to members of the deaf and disabled community to help them with the cost of living. We're also currently running information sessions around the voter ID, which is something new coming in for this summer. As you know, we are based in Winkfield, and we are adjacent to the reception. We will shortly be moving, but remaining within Winkfield. We'll be taking one of the porta cabins in the the garden behind us, which will allow more space for the staff and volunteers, which I think is important. We also have outreach at Northumberland Park Resource Centre. We're there once a week. So again, we're trying to reach different sections of the community by going out. And the other avenue open to us, which will be up and running very shortly, is the old shop mobility site in Wood Green, adjacent to the court building and just behind the Wood Green Library, which secured those premises for 3 years. And we'll be having staff and volunteers at the premises. So it's another way in which we're getting out and engaging with the community. Our funders consist of the Get Out and Get Active Magic grants, the National Lottery Awards for All, and in particular Haringey Council. And we're always very grateful to the funders to allow us to become the voice of the disabled, deaf and disabled people within the community, but also to improve the lives of our community. We shall continue to seek alternative funding, but currently we are financially stable, which I think is very important for an organisation and for those members to be aware of that. We are primarily the largest deaf and disabled people's organisation within the board, which is something that the trustees and the staff are all very proud of. I'd like to thank the staff and the trustees for all the hard work that they put in throughout the year. Without their commitment, we wouldn't be able to offer the services that we do to the community as a whole. I'm going to just ask Phil, anything to add to that?
Well, you've done a really comprehensive cover of what we've been doing in the last year and what we're planning to do going forward. But as Graham said, it is the work of the staff and the trustees that help take it forward. But actually what gives us the power and what gives us the encouragement is you, the members. And it's because of the membership and the fact that you are part of us that gives us that voice. So it would be all very well us being an organisation, but if we weren't representing what you were thinking and what you were talking about as a community, then it wouldn't carry as much weight. And therefore there are lots of opportunities, both previously and coming up, where we'd like members to get involved and to play a more active role in feeding back and listening to your views so that we can share them, not only here within Haringey, but both nationally as well, around the effects of what's happening in our society today for deaf and disabled people. So thank you, because you, the members that make us as an organisation as great as it is today.
Okay, thanks, Phil. We do have the accountant, David Howard, who produce our accounts and also deal with payroll. And I have to say that they have provided a very good service for us at a very reasonable price. Phil is always very keen to get the lowest price wherever he's engaging with organisations. But David Howard has stepped up and they do provide a good service. As our accountant, we need to formally ask for you to agree that they continue to be our accountants for the next year. Can I just possibly see a raise of hands from members if they have an agreement with David Howard? Okay, thank you. So it's carried that David Howard will continue to be our accountants. As we don't have any resolutions, we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which was the election of myself and Aisha. I'm going to hand over to Phil for that, for the results.
Thank you. So, all 4 members of this election Haringey were entitled to cast their votes in the upcoming election for the reappointment and confirmation of the appointment of Aisha Toure and Graham Day for a term of 3 years on the Board of Trustees. We did this in in a way to try to make it as inclusive and accessible as possible. So we offered members the opportunity to come in person, cast their votes, to do it electronically, and also to do it by postal vote. I'm pleased to say that by resolution of more than 50% of all valid votes casted, both Graham Day and Aisha Toure are reconfirmed as trustees of Disability Action Haringey for the next 3 years, and I'd like to thank them and for standing once again and committing their time to doing so. There were no spoiled votes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
That's a better turnout than my election.
Well done. We were going to be moving on to Councillor. That's the message. Unfortunately, she's just had to pop out very shortly. She is coming back in. So what we're going to do is we were due to have a guest speaker of Ashley Archer, but unfortunately he dropped out at the last moment. So very kindly and dropping in at the last minute, I'll allow Graham to introduce our last minute guest speaker.
Yes, I did touch on it earlier. This lady came to us some months ago, over a year ago, and we were impressed with her when we saw her, and we asked her to come along as a volunteer, and her work has been excellent for the organisation. But I'll let her tell you her journey. I'll ask Rakia if she can come up, possibly, or she can stay there and address us. Over to you, Rakia.
Hi. I didn't actually know you were talking about me when you were introducing. Nice to meet you all. I'm Rakia. So I came to Disability Action Haringey from my university originally as an intern. And then when it ended, I decided to continue to volunteer because I was getting a lot from it, and I just liked the people and the environment and everything. And then from there, I became the community support officer, which is what I'm doing now. So I go around and tell people about how they can make their organisation more disability friendly and things like that. And it's just lovely to be in such an empowering environment and to work here and get to know everyone. I think I've learned a lot about myself from being here, and I've become a lot more of a confident person, even in advocating for myself. You know, I think I'm a bit more motivated and things like that. And I really can't thank Phil and Graham enough for giving me the opportunity to work in a place like this, you know, and I wish there was more places like this because I originally come from Newham and I don't know any charities that are doing the work that you guys are doing in Haringey. I've never seen any of my councillors from Newham, you know, so yeah, I just really enjoy being here and I will continue to have me as long as you guys will have me, you know. Yeah, thank you.
So, Rakia has been an integral part of our team, and part of what Disability Action Haringey is about empowering members of our community through volunteer opportunities to brighten and upskill the skills that they do have, and to support them into employment. And I have to say that Rakia is a perfect example of what happens when, as members of our community, we are given the opportunity to empower ourselves and take ourselves forward. And she is an integral part of our team, and we wouldn't be without her. So, excellent. Unfortunately, it looks like Councillor Dazinetti is.
So, can I just sort of come in there? Andrew has pointed out quite rightly that this week is the National Autistic Week. And I think Andrew is going to say a few words on that.
Gap. Hi everyone. So my name's Andrew. I'm a trustee here. I'm one of your constituents, David, on One Heart Lane. I am autistic, and I'm also the Autism Lead for London with NHS England. We should talk. This is World Autism Acceptance Week. We've changed from awareness to acceptance for a reason. And when I have a short time to speak about autism, I tend to focus a bit on language. It shouldn't be remarkable that an autistic person has a relatively senior job about autism. But it is still remarkable. It shouldn't be. And I think that fact in and of itself is at the heart of some of the problems we have and many of our misunderstandings of what autism is. The narrative is still led by non-autistic people. And I think with most other minority groups, there'd be lots of fingers of complaint in the air, quite rightly, if that were true. The majority of people speaking about us were not one of us. But there are very few even fingers of complaint in the air. But that is still true. When I speak about language, I guess I like to say that most of us prefer to be called autistic. For many years we had a language that talked about people with autism, that maybe I had autism. Well, I don't. It's not something that sits outside of me. It's not a non-autistic Andrew trapped inside a shell struggling to get out. I am autistic because if I wasn't, I would be someone else. And I suppose the message we hear when we put it to one side or tell us that we have something, which implies something negative, doesn't it? We have something, we might want a cure for that. I don't want a cure for just being me. Thank you very much. So I think change often starts with language. It's why we call ourselves disabled people these days in preference to people with disability, because we are disabled by society, not in and of ourselves broken or needing a fix, just to be accepted, not tolerated, but genuinely accepted. One of the diagnostic criteria for autism remains that I have communication difficulties. Well, I think we're kind of not doing too bad today. You know? But we also know that even that criteria is probably already well out of date, and why so many of us are not recognised. Because frankly, you have to be in crisis to be recognised as autistic. You're not allowed to be living a happy, successful autistic life. And I think that fact goes well beyond just autism, into the experience of many of us here. May I just, give me a second, that's all right. Or I'll lose my thread, forgive me. And there aren't many threads left to lose, frankly, to be honest. But I do think that language matters, doesn't it? Because it filters down how people think about us. That we're not somewhere over there, human beings, same as everyone else. And what we know from that research about communication, for my community, is that autistic to autistic communication is not only just fine, it's been shown to be better than non-autistic to non-autistic communication. Evidentially, therefore, I'm not broken. And for all of us, it's about meeting in the middle more, isn't it? The people need to learn to speak autistic, just as I'm constantly asked to learn to speak what we call neurotypical, non-autistic. And I am always trying to meet in the middle, but I'm not allowed to. I have to go the whole hog. The onus is always on me. And it amazes me, in schools, when an autistic or disabled child is bullied or teased, who is it that gets referred for the social skills class?
Yeah.
The bully?
No, the other ones.
The other ones. And yet who is it that needs the social skills? When the system tells us, no, you have to do it this way, which one of us has the diagnosis of the rigid thinking, the inability to adapt, and which one of us is actually in that position? So thank you for letting me have the chance to briefly fill a gap for this here today, but to acknowledge World Autism Acceptance Week not just awareness, but acceptance. Thank you very much.
Councillor Nezin is been able to rejoin us, so can I hand over to you to say a few words?
I'm really sorry I had to duck out. I just had a meeting about GP services in the borough. I'm sure that worries many of you, and especially around access. It's certainly one of the key things that people talk to me a lot about as I go around, so that's why I have to duck out and come back in again. I want to miss my opportunity about the conversation. So, I mean, I'm just really pleased to be here. I think that I was here for when David spoke, and David's right, we're really lucky to have an organisation like Disability Action Haringey in the borough. I think it's really important. The EAH are putting me through my paces on training on the social model of disability, so I'm on my own learning journey so that I can better represent you all and better represent all of the residents in Haringey. I think that the work develops and goes from strength to strength, and I'm sure that's a little bit of what you've heard about today here. We in the council, I personally like that we in the council have an organisation that can hold us to account. David earlier mentioned LGNs. I was surprised you allowed swearing in speeches, Phil. But in all seriousness, it is a serious issue, and those of you who've spoken to me about it know how important and seriously I take the issues related to it for our disabled community. And DAH and others within that community are working with us. We have a group that's meeting regularly, and we're being held to account and set to task on how to make things work better for people.
Well, can you please, people like me on site in Peel, I cannot go online. Why don't they make it more accessible? Like all the forms, everything is going online with the council. It's not being inclusive. People, I've got a sight problem. They don't answer the telephone. There's no other way. They don't respond to you, but everything has to go online. I can't do online.
Completely understand. Certainly in social services, one of the things that adult social services, one of the things that I asked the team to do is do what we call a review of the front door. What I mean by the front door is the phones, the email, etc., all the information and the different mechanisms. So we've got someone in the team who's just been working on the aids and adaptations, and we're going to see some improvement on that. And then the next step is, I know, and then the next piece of work is on that, exactly that. I know it's a problem, and actually we do need to be fully inclusive.
So, at the end of the session, there is going to be a networking opportunity for everybody, and I'm sure that the councillor will happily engage with the conversations. But if we can let her just finish.
Well, no, I don't have anything to say other than I'm here. Phil always knows how to get hold of me. So if you don't know how to get hold of me directly, or you don't feel comfortable doing that, Phil can be the intermediary. But I am around afterwards to speak directly. But really, I'm here to say that I'm really supportive of the organisation, and really, I hope to see you all more and keep our conversations going around where things we can make better and some of the progress.
Thank you so much for coming and giving us your time today.
I think today it's been quite an eye-opening for me to see so many people here.
Disability Action Haringey, yes.
It's certainly good to see members out. It's good to actually put a face to the name. I hope you found the meeting of interest. Sometimes annual general meetings can be a little bit on the flat side. I hope there's been a bit of variety today, and you will all take something from it. Certainly, as our organisation, we look to build on our strengths, and the membership is our strength. We will always look to build on that, to remain, from the organisation point of view, the voice of the disabled people, the deaf and disabled people within the community. So I thank you all for attending, and the food is now available, so you're very welcome to help yourself.